Hi, everyone. My name is Ahmad Ashrafi, and welcome to today's podcast. We have a special friend, someone who's definitely, when I think of her, I think of like boss. She's definitely conquered a lot of worlds, and now she's conquered this entrepreneurship world, which is very, very impressive. So, Tatiana, nice to have you here.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. So excited. I feel very connected to you and to your team from being part of this entrepreneurial world now. So, very excited to have this conversation today. And thank you for having me.
For sure. And like you said, being connected, I actually started thinking that we should start calling this podcast the tribe because entrepreneurs are sort of like they're kind of tribal. We're almost like we recognize each other, we understand the struggles, but we also understand that we're willing to work 10 times more for ourselves and
Yeah.
for what we believe in than 1 hour for something we don't believe in. So definitely recognize that in you. And I'm happy that you're here, and maybe we can start by asking you a question that perhaps not like giving a summary of who you are, but tell us why you do what you do.
Oof, man, why do I do what I do? I love what I do. I always have. I've always questioned it. I'm like, how did I find this love and passion so early on? I've been doing public relations for the past 20 years. And I fell in love with honestly connecting with people, connecting with their stories, connecting with their brand, but more importantly, connecting with what they do, right? So it really drives me. I love to see how authentic people can really bring their visions to life. I love to tell stories. So I love to tell their stories because they love to tell their stories. So it's just like contagious, and I really fell in love with that art early on. In my life, I've always loved to read. I've always loved art. I always loved literature. And it really started bringing me into this space of communication and really just connecting with people. I feel the most alive when I'm connecting with someone, when I can connect with their passions, even if it's of no interest to me, but because I see them so excited, I get excited with them. So I really think it comes down to the human touch and being able to see life through their lens.
Sure. I'm going to butcher a Warren Buffett quote that he says, whether it's math or communication, he would choose communication as a more important skill than anything else. Because if you don't know what you're doing, you might be the best at what you're doing, but if you don't know how to communicate it, you basically don't get anywhere in life. So what you do is incredibly powerful because I know some of your clients are best of the best, but you really make their story shine. So and I also think that you're a connector actually. So where did that come from? Connecting people, making sure that there's a fit. How do you gauge someone being a good fit for one another?
Honestly, it comes from a place of serving other people, right? Like it comes from a place of like, like these two can actually either be good friends or good business partners, or they can actually complement each other. It comes from a very genuine place. I'm always thinking about how can I bring people together. I think that itself it's a bit of an art form. You know how everyone gets nervous when they're having a dinner party, they're putting a dinner party together or a birthday. Everybody's like, oh my God, are they gonna get along with this and so and so? And so I do believe in, always bringing like-minded minds together. I think it's just the nature also of what I do. I'm always thinking of brands that can work together and find an organic way to connect. Again, this word connection always comes to the foundation of everything that we do and that I do. So yeah, I'm always looking at like, you know what, this restaurant can do a really cool collaboration with this, brand, with this other chef, or this real estate project can really go well with, this kind of like amenity or a vision or brand. And so I am always just thinking of like what makes sense and how can we connect. How can we connect people?
Yeah. What's your process though? Like, is there a lot of intuition there, or is it something that you have like perfected over time?
think it's a little bit of intuition. I mean, it's a lot of intuition. I should say I should lead with the fact that it is a lot of intuition. But because I do play in a lot of different places in terms of the different industries that I work in or work with, I get to see the world from a 1,000 foot, right? I get to see how all these different players work within experts within their fields, and I'm able to spot like trends. I'm able to see how they can work together. And so through intuition, through understanding people and what they are looking for, like just yesterday I was speaking with this incredible architect that's doing this insane community on the West Coast. He's from Jordan, and he's so connected to, you know, his work and design and creating from the place of so much purity. And he wants to continue expanding his business, which is morphing into really like a hospitality business. But he's so afraid, and he wants investors, and like he's so afraid of putting his vision into someone else's hands, because he doesn't understand, he doesn't want someone to sort of overcast what he's trying to bring to life. And so immediately as I'm talking to him, as I understand his values, as I understand his vision, I start thinking, wow, I have this developer that's so enamored and obsessed with design, with bringing the best in class, and who would respect his vision, who would not get in his way. And maybe I should bring these guys together to have that conversation, to start that conversation, to see how they can both, one through the passion of supporting and bringing these types of works to life, and one who already is bringing these works to life, and how do I bring those guys together? So it's really understanding people, listening. I take a good time of just listening and reflecting on what people are saying, and taking a moment to say, does this make sense? I really want meaningful collaborations and connections. I don't just like bring random people together. I think that's awkward. I don't want to force anything. Anything that feels forced is already bound to not be successful. So I'm like, I really want to make sure that if I'm bringing two people together, that it's for a purpose. And so kind of letting the purpose drive my intuition, and then bringing the parties together.
That is wonderful. And I like the purpose, like the objective being results oriented, basically. Like, how can we make this happen? And if it does happen, it's sort of like in a state of flow, sort of effortless. It's not
Yeah.
really pushing people.
Yeah.
Let's go up to your like 20-year career. You mentioned, or I know that you started more corporate and then you took the plunge.
Yeah.
How was that process? How did that like, were you always an entrepreneur? Do you always feel that on day one you were always thinking, okay, one day I'll do it? Or was it more like later in your career that you were like, oh, I should do my own business?
That's an interesting one. I come from a family of entrepreneurs, and I've been working since I was 5 years old. So please don't call child laborers on my parents. But I started working with my parents at 5 years old at a grocery store. We used to live in New York. My dad used to work in Brooklyn, my mom in Manhattan, and I used to go with my mom, you know, usually in the summer times, or when, you know, on the weekends if they couldn't have childcare for us. But we would actually go in and start, you know, and work with them, and we would save for our own things, you know, my brother and I. And so I understood early on too that my family is just generations and generations of entrepreneurs, and I think that's already part of like how we're built. And I've always had like some sort of side business, right? Like I used to work with my parents, and then I would do makeup for proms for my friends and for their friends, you know, during prom time. Or I was always doing something. And so I think I've always had that bug inside me, and I've always looked for a place of where I can create, where I can be myself. My parents always complained that I was so independent that I always wanted to do my own thing. It's like if they're telling me to do this, I'm like, no, 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 I want to do it like this. And it was always kind of an intuition that I was always following. I didn't realize that until now that I've been reflecting that I've always just followed my intuition. And I started in fashion. I fell in love with that world very early on in my career. I thought, wow, these people are like truly disruptors in their fields. They're rebellious and also risk takers, and I think that they are the true masters of storytelling. I always look to fashion to see what are they doing, what are these brands doing, what rules are they breaking, and so it started from there. And then obviously slowly but surely growing in my career, having worked in the corporate side of things, understanding that there needs to be structure, right, in everything that we do. And I think that that's one of the biggest skills and also just understanding and mindset that was so important for me. As a creative, I think the last thing we have is structure. We don't like to be put in a box, but I understood the importance of it from an entrepreneurial standpoint, right? I understood from a running a business standpoint. I know that I can't, buy more than I can spend. And so I had to learn the corporate world that I was in. I believe was like my master or my doctor's degree in learning how to fine tune my skill set and also applying it to a business. So knowing, I didn't realize it then, I guess, but I feel like I've always wanted something of my own. And whether it was going to be the continuation of PR or other businesses, I've always dreamt of doing something that I can bring to life and that I can put my skill set to and apply it. And it's just so happened that last year I had a huge opportunity of doing that, and my intuition was like, hey, I'm knocking on again. And I want you to, and it really inspired me to stop ignoring this curiosity that I've always had with me, to explore this passion of mine of doing things the way that I see them and the way that I want to share it with the world. So PR, I still have the bug in my stomach. I still love to tell stories. I still love, sitting down with my clients and dreaming with them and strategizing with them. I fell in love with strategy. I'm like, wow, how can, really navigating those spaces and really working with like clients that I want to work with and that my team wants to work with, and being very intentional with that. So yeah, I don't know if that answers the question, but I think everything sort of led from that seed that I was born with already in entrepreneurship to cultivating it and learning how to get to where I am today.
I love that. And I particularly take away your corporate life was the foundation, perhaps, of knowledge, of structure, of how to do things. And then you weren't afraid of, because I think there's like three things that are incredibly addictive in life. It's like carbs, heroin, and probably a salary. And most people can't make that plunge. Like it takes a lot of courage to do it. But I think from what I gathered from your experience is that you were always sort of like in preparation mode, and I'm getting ready for the moment when I am ready. And then you took the plunge, and now you're super successful, and Chao Studio is doing so well. What do you think is a common mistake entrepreneurs are doing? You see a lot of entrepreneurship. So what do you see that they're making, and what do you suggest people should do?
I would say that it's something that I struggled with even in my corporate side, because sometimes as you have so much ambition, it's hard to curb that ambition. So something that I learned a little bit the hard way was not curbing the ambition, but trying to be a little bit more patient and not trying to grow so fast. And so trying to create a balance between growing the business and developing the vision, as well as developing and bringing up a team and teaching them and coaching them and being a leader. I think those two worlds collide quite a bit. Some people are just, their business and they want to, grow and just focus on that side of the business. But in a company or in business in general, as you are developing a business, you can't do it by yourself, right? You have to develop a team, and you want to develop, I want to develop a team. I want to be able to share my vision and also help the new generation sort of grow and develop their visions and fine-tune their visions, and teaching them and coaching them as best as I can, but trying to find the balance with also someone who's incredibly ambitious and I want to grow, and like what I found is that it's very easy to grow. It's very hard to maintain, and it's very hard to, the quality should never suffer. And so closing the gap between those two things and being able to balance things is something that I learned, and I see a lot in businesses, right? I've seen a lot of tech unicorns grow tremendously, only for a year or two later to completely collapse. And so I understand that growth, while it's exciting at the moment, it's not, a rapid growth is certainly not healthy not for your mental state and not for the business in general. So I would say that that's the biggest mistake that I see over and over and over again, and that I experienced it firsthand, and then also learn to really slow down and make sure that I'm learning in the process. Because sometimes we skip those steps. It's like the running before you can walk situation, and you don't pay for it immediately, you pay for it in the long term. So I'm learning to really slow the pace and like take one step at a time.
That's actually a recurring theme that I hear from when I ask this question. It's not growing too fast. It's never you're growing too slow.
Yeah.
It's never that. That's never like a problem. And I actually think it's like a consolidation. You become more consolidated. It's sort of like that bamboo that grows 5 years to the roots and then spurts up. Some people go up, have no roots, and then the first wind they topple over. I completely agree. And it's almost like, I was talking to someone yesterday that said that they were a little bit discouraged about their startup because there's a startup that is 20 steps ahead of them. And I said, we're all born ugly. We're not perfect on day one. We're gonna be 20 steps behind our competition. That's fine. Good for them that they're 20 steps ahead, because you can see the road. You can see they've paved the way. And if you're the only one doing it, you might hit a jackpot, and yes, you hit the gap in the market and you become incredibly successful in the day. But if you're, I wouldn't say a follower, but maybe someone that revolutionizes or does something different, and we're all unique in our way, like we're gonna get to our place eventually. But don't try to be like, oh, I'm gonna try to be like that guy that's 20 steps ahead, and of course he has a nice office, so of course I need a nice office, and they have a beautiful website, so I also need a beautiful website. And then you get caught up in this, like, you're not ready for all those expenses. You're not ready for all that because you're not even paid yet. You don't even get to that level. You're not consolidated is what I mean.
I love that you're saying that, because something that I think is also very important to highlight is, in general, whether you are an employee at a company or you're starting your own company, not looking to your sides to compare yourself to other people. I do think that that is perhaps something that really holds you back, doesn't allow you to be your authentic self. Everyone's going to do things differently, and you should be in competition with yourself. That is the only competitor that you need to really fine tune, pay attention to, because everyone's on their own growth journey. I think that's another big mistake that a lot of people do, is comparing themselves to other people, and oh, so and so is doing this, and it's funny. Like I try to quiet that noise, because I need to focus on what it is that what's my North Star. And so I do think that's a dangerous place to play it. It's good. It's healthy to just be aware. Obviously, we're not on an island, but I think it's important to really stay and every mentor and boss I've ever had in my career have always said, stay in your lane, focus on you. Who cares if someone else got promoted? Who cares if someone else got a raise? Do what you need to do to focus on you, and everything else will follow.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we do this with people. We don't do this with people, sorry, but we do this with business. Like, you wouldn't go out on the street and be like, oh, that guy is taller than me, or that guy looks better than me. Like, you don't do this thing as a person, but as a business, you do this. It's like, oh, they're much bigger and they have a nicer office and they make more money and they have a better sales team. And then they did this event. And then you're like, why are you, it's like obsessing with, something that's like, it's not even a, as a
Yeah,
person, it doesn't even register because you're like,
yeah,
I myself,
yeah,
and I know that I need to improve my food or I need to work out a little bit more or whatever. You know that. And it's like, you don't do that in the business. You're starting like focus out and not in.
yeah. I mean, I take it's almost like turn that competitiveness and that comparison into an opportunity for growth, for to turn it into curiosity, right? How can I do things better, and how can I learn from this or use it as inspiration? Like, I am inspired by this. Perhaps I can set some smaller goals for myself, but it's not like they're better or worse. I think, honestly, the more I've reflected and learned and been on this like growth journey personally and professionally, the more I learned that there is no better than or less than. We are all we all start from the same from the same plane, right? Like, we're all on the same page. There's no one that's better or less. We're just all unique in ourselves, and if the more we believe that and the more that we understand and know that, I think the better, or for lack of a better word, the more authentic we are to everything that we do, and that we're not comparing ourselves, and we live in a much more healthier space and bring more peace into our lives.
Sure. I think that that also brings to mind the community aspect. Like, you are yourself, but you're also part of a community. So you're not really comparing yourself. You're like, how do I help my community? Because I'm not trying to topple them, because that hurts me. If they do well, I do well. It started like a different mentality. And I think what you do with PR, which is it's in, obviously this is my point of view and you're the expert, but this is my outsider point of view, is that PR can be kind of esoteric. It's not math. It's really art. It's more art than math. And I'm sure there's some math to it, but there's so many avenues, there's so many variables, there's so many ways of doing things that you have to not compare yourself and be authentic. And then what is the process? Let's say that if you want to work with a new company, how do you find like product market fit and make that work for them when you've had another developer or another real estate or another restaurant? Like, how does that process work for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we touched a little bit on it before, but because we are also different, right? No two projects are the same. No two developers are the same. No two approaches are the same. There might be some foundation of everything that we do. There might be a foundation of how to build a restaurant, how to build a real estate project. The way that it comes to life is always going to be different. I think my responsibility is to really understand these projects and what makes them unique. I find the uniqueness even on a doorknob, that they're using for the residential building, right? Or I find the uniqueness in an ingredient that this chef is using within their restaurant. It's being able to understand what makes each project unique to the people that are bringing it to life, and how do we then weave all those different pieces together to tell that story. So I think it's the process is in listening and being curious, asking questions, and finding and being very well informed. I think something that is very important, and especially in what I do, is being able, and any industry, honestly, paying attention to what everyone else is doing. And this is ironic from the conversation we just had, but paying attention, being aware, if there's 25 new residential luxury buildings that are coming up in Miami or in New York or in LA, understanding what those projects are, what they bring to the table, then saying like understanding that so that you can spot the trends, but then understanding your project, understanding what makes it unique, and getting curious about everything that is being brought to the table for this particular project so that you can talk about it. So the process is really, it's a lot of questions. It's getting in there deep, you know, getting to know the architects, getting to know the developers, getting to know the artisans, getting to know literally, I mean, the landscape team, and getting to know all the different components that bring this project to life, to be able to learn what kind of uniqueness do they bring to the table, and then how can we communicate that?
For sure. So I think it's like maybe comparing with what we said before. It's not good to compare yourself, but you are competing. So it's how do
Right.
I compete in this market, not how do I compare to this market.
Yeah.
It's a different approach.
It's
And what you're saying is like
And how do you understand?
understand,
It
correct?
comes from a place of like taking a step back and understanding what everyone else is doing, and then so that you can learn how to compete with your, you know, with what's in the market.
Yeah. Well, as you know, I help entrepreneurs invest, and the most common mistake I see, or perhaps lack of a better word, mistake, is that the lack of knowledge, the lack of information, or perhaps the lack of exposure, and sometimes fear. And it's kind of like counterintuitive because you think that entrepreneurs are more risk takers, but I found that when they're investing, they're more risk averse.
Totally.
So how do you see this point, and how, let's talk about investing for a little bit.
I couldn't agree with you more. I don't know why that is. I mean, for everyone, again, everyone's different. I think for me, when something is so outside of my expertise, I think it comes from a place of like wanting to understand better and being able to know what's right for me, what, you know, I work incredibly hard. So I think that the fear is the unknown, right? And then putting that trust, which you would do that in any business, right? Like if I'm a developer, I'm going to hire the best team so that they can bring this vision to life. But when it comes to investing, because it's people's personal financing or finances, or at least their business finances or whatever that may be, you know, because I think that is, you know, money is obviously a resource that we are all, you know, always trying to figure out. So some people are uncomfortable when it comes to money, right? Even like me talking about it, like I'm uncomfortable even talking about it because it takes so much to earn it, that when you're about to invest it, you're like, oh my God, this feels like a real risk. Whereas like me jumping off and doing my own company feels like not as risky, right? But because we know how the value of it, I think it makes it much more difficult to make that jump.
For sure. No, and I completely relate, because I think that after seeing hundreds of entrepreneurs going through this motion, it's like, because you have mastery at your craft, going into a different pond, you're like, whoa, it's like heightened sense. It's like, what's happening? You might see it in PR as well, because I think a lot of companies haven't gone to PR. How do you explain to them to bridge that gap, to say, this is actually like, because some entrepreneurs might feel the same thing, like, oh, I'm going to not throw money, but I'm going to put money into this. How am
Yeah.
I going to see a return?
And honestly, it's interesting because I see some similarities as well. But when it comes to PR, this is even more risk taking because we can't guarantee anything, right? And I guess similar to investing, you can't guarantee that you're going to make an ROI, but like you hope that you're in the right hands for someone to invest on your behalf and that you can get an ROI from it. And so what I always tell clients is that with how competitive the market is on the real estate side of things, on the F&B side of things, on the hotel side of things, you're just one other hotel or one other restaurant or one other residential building. And very sadly, the way that we operate all is whoever's screaming the loudest is the one being heard. And if you're not even part of the conversation, that makes it so much more difficult for people to learn about you. So whatever your strategy is, whether it's, a word of mouth strategy or a PR strategy, you have to do something to invest in your business so people are talking about it. Those that don't oftentimes struggle the most because they're trying to compete with people that are actually taking the risk of investing and getting a PR team behind them so that they're communicating it to media, to influencers, to brands. And so you have, and their strategy behind that. You can't, it's very hard to just sit on a business, whatever business you are these days, and just hope for the best. That strategy does not work. So I can't emphasize enough the importance of being relevant, of actually creating awareness. The worst thing you can do for your business is to just stay quiet.
Yeah. And when you were talking, it was like a parallel to investing.
Yeah.
It's like if you don't invest, you'll never get out of the financial pressure. If you don't invest, you don't get ahead. And if you don't invest, it's all like irrelevant.
Yeah.
But at some point, because you're like, hey, I'm if I don't produce, I'm I'm gone, I'm dead. And I actually had someone on the podcast that said, I'm an entrepreneur because I've invested before. Because I still have to work, but investing gave me the freedom to say, if this goes belly up, I'm good. And that's not for everybody, because some people need the pit bull running behind them so that they can run faster and like really produce, because they're like under a huge pressure, which is one type of entrepreneur. And those are like the uncut gems. I don't know if you saw that movie, but it gives me anxiety to think of people that operate in that sort of high pressure, high.
I think everyone who's an entrepreneur has a little bit of that, maybe at different spectrums.
For sure.
Yeah.
But that's like where you don't want to be, because I think that's what especially I produce my best results when it's effortless. When it's flow, what you mentioned at the beginning, when there's flow. Oh, I put two people together, there's a purpose. And I wasn't pushing a stone uphill. I was sort of like, unfair advantage means the stone is sort of like, I didn't even have to push it. It just went down the hill. And the same thing happens with investing and entrepreneurship. Is like when it's the most effortless, that's when you get the best results, not when you have a pit bull running behind you and you have to kind of like save the house at the same time and save yourself and be present with your life. Going to a different subject about sacrifices, which I think is like also very important in both worlds. This is something like I feel people don't understand. It's like a sacrifice to be an entrepreneur. They think, oh, I have to give up certain things. But how do you view sacrifices now that you are an entrepreneur, that you are a business owner, that you are crushing it, that you have employees, that you're doing all this stuff? How do you see that sacrifice?
I almost wish we can rebrand the word sacrifice.
Absolutely.
Because I feel like it has a negative connotation to it, right? Whereas sacrifice I think just means balance, right? Like we have this mentality in the US that, we have to have it all at the same time. And the more you learn about it, and the more you get curious about what do I need to do to be successful, the word sacrifice comes up a lot, because you're like, okay, cool, well, maybe this year I will just, I don't know, I won't spend on marketing, I won't spend on PR because I want to focus on growth. And yeah, that's a sensible thing to do for your business. Because, you're going to have to sacrifice something at some point for your business or, for your personal self, for the better good, right? I think sacrifice, again, it sounds a little negative, but I just think it's a a part of the balance. It's just another chip in the balance bucket so that we're able to fine tune and focus on our where we want to go.
And I actually think you're 100% right that sacrifice should be rebranded because really sacrifice equals service.
Yeah.
Like if
Yeah.
you don't, it's like, and almost saying no to things is saying yes to others.
100%. Yep.
And I love what you just said. Like you can't, there's an expectation to have it all at all times. Like you have to travel, you have to have a vacation, you need to have the boat and the house and the other house and the ski trip and the fancy car and the business and you're like, when this is like, it happens, but maybe for 10 minutes.
Right.
The rest of the time you're like building
Right.
around that. And it's also like you're loving the process more. And I actually think that it's not a sacrifice because, like you said, it's like if you rebrand it to the good part, it's like I wouldn't even call it sacrifice. I'm calling it like I'm actually loving what I do, and that's it.
It's what you have to do to find balance. I think there's something that I also learned in these past 20 years, or I guess in my life, and it just kind of hit me in the past, I would say 3 to 4 years. Sometimes when you're so focused on one area of your life, right? For me, it's been building my career, fine tuning my skills, really becoming an expert in my space, completely overshadowed a lot of other areas in my life that are also very important to me, that are very unique to me, but that I had abandoned in my life just so that I can focus on being the best version of myself from a career standpoint. But the best version of myself is so much more complex and has more depth than that, right? Like I'm very into my family and spirituality and my mental health and my friendships. And so I think that something that I learned just going back to that, I sacrificed all of those other areas of my life to just focus on this one area, which was my career. And then, 4 or 5 years ago, I just realized, wait, I need to diverse my portfolio over here. I completely abandoned, because you do get to a place, something that you learn is that you can't just put all your eggs in one basket. And obviously those are like all cliche sayings that as you get older, they're like, this is why they say this. And I hate that they're so cliche, but it's so true. And I think that, being able to diversify the portfolio and understanding that you have to, you can't have it all at the same time, but you need to still focus on each of those different areas to be able to grow holistically.
Yeah. What's next in your life? Now you have your business. Where do you want to take it? What's exciting to you that's happening now?
What's exciting is that I haven't figured it out, right? I'm like learning as I go. I think that I came into this new entrepreneurial space with a very open heart and open mind, with a very soft blueprint of how I wanted to do things, but I'm really allowing myself to take my time in further developing the business, being able to make it what I hope one day would be a global business. But I'm not even focused on the global. I'm here in the let me make sure that all the foundation is solid. And so what's next for me is making sure that I have and continue to have a very solid team that's learning, that's inspired, that I'm learning as I go more and more, is that as an entrepreneur, you're working the hardest and you are, really focused on building the business, but you also need to be able to sit side by side with your team and help them understand and inspire them. And that's a very hard thing to do, because everyone wants you to care, or as an entrepreneur, you want everybody to care about your business the way that you do. But something that I learned is that not everyone does, and that's okay. but how do you continue to inspire people, and make sure that you're supporting them and their vision and what they want to do. So I'm really focusing on that, making sure I have a very strong team that's motivated and inspired. And then, I've invested in other areas of the business to be able to diversify it, and understanding what's happening in the PR world and in the branding world. It's getting smaller and smaller. Before, you can stand alone as a brand. Today, you have to attach yourself to like 10, 15, 20 different brands to be able to tell one story. So really investing in my business on an area that I can actually further expand on, like partnerships and collaborations, and being able to do that in a way that complements what we do from a traditional PR standpoint. Yeah, I mean, I guess from a personal perspective, continue investing in the other areas of my life, learning how to say no. Not every, the other day I got invited to this business dinner. It was last minute, albeit, but I already had like my yoga class with my friend. That in another time I probably would have said, "Sorry, friend, see you later. I'm going to this business dinner." And understanding like, no, friendships are actually very important to me. So and also this yoga class is probably gonna be really good for my mind, body, and soul. So being able to attend that and making sure that I'm not abandoning other areas in my life that are important. So I don't know, I'm not looking too far ahead. I know that I have the grander goal of like continuing to grow and being true to myself and focusing on the day to day. I think one thing that we do often is plan too much ahead, that we're like, okay, we need to do this and that and the other. And I'm like, I'm here. I'm here right now, and I can see as far as maybe a couple of months from me, maybe a year ahead, but I like to plant those smaller goals just to be able to make them achievable. I obviously know what my bigger goal is. Just one year at a time.
Love it.
That's as far as I can go right now.
Love it.
Yeah.
And you actually touched upon a subject that I like to finish podcasts on, which is you mentioned you like to inspire your team. What inspires you to your work today?
Man, it's silly, but seeing my team and my clients happy on the professional side makes me happy. Seeing and understanding also our worth as a company and what we bring to the table, and being able to say no at the right times, it's so powerful. And that has given me so much confidence, because I know that I'm being true to myself, and that in turn that'll also help my team. And then, also learning how to better communicate with my friends, with my family, and create boundaries. I know I feel like we got very spiritual, but like being able to just stay and to honor myself and staying true to myself and being authentic to myself has made me start like being happier on my own and standing up for myself. So I think those things inspire me. It inspires me, obviously inspires me to travel and to be around friends and family. Like, there's nothing that makes me happier than a family, fun day. I do family Sundays every Sunday, every week. And it's the same smile, same laughs every single time, and cooking with my family that makes me really happy and inspires me. But yeah, just finding peace and growth. I don't know.
That's a great answer. It's actually a great answer, because there's nothing worse than not being yourself.
Yeah.
So being yourself should be the best. Like, it's the
Yeah.
opposite of that. And I think it's very inspirational to be yourself and then own it. Like, it's not only about being yourself in like kind of like shy way. It's like, no, I'm myself and I own it. And my friendships, my spirituality, my yoga, my boundaries are important. The business is equally important, but it's putting them into the same balance, which is what you mentioned before. So it was wonderful having you. I'd love to have you back. I know Chow Studios is going to go global. I know it's going to have a long legs, because what you do is very special, and I think you're very good at connecting people and telling stories, which is what PR is. So hope to have you back, and Is there anything else you'd like to tell people about yourself, or finish off?
Thank you. No, I mean, just keep doing you. Stop pleasing people. I think that thank you so much for having me. This is a very, like, I love reflecting and on all your questions and taking the time to chat with you today. And I'm still thinking about investing, hopefully with you soon. But you made me think about the risk averse thing and how, as entrepreneurs, we tend to do the investing, or the investing seems to be more of a risk averse thing. So leaning more into that, leaning more into what scares you, because that's what makes you successful. That's what made me successful where I am, or at least have the success that I have today.
Stepping outside your comfort zone is where
Yeah,
growth is.
yeah. It's funny that sometimes we only see it in one dimension, but it really applies to everything. So thank you for
Absolutely.
opening my eyes to that.
For sure. Well, thank you again for being here, and we'll talk soon.
Sounds great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.